welcome to Conversations with Ralph and Randy, where we have legal discussions that are pertinent to the community. I'm Chisa Penix Brown of Give It to the People, and I'll be your lovely host today as I get to discuss all of the legal issues with these two gentlemen who are pillars of the community. And so I want to first start out because I think a lot of times when we're looking at legal issues, people give up rights automatically. They don't even realize they're giving up rights. And so I want you guys to just kind of talk about some of the rights that people give up without even knowing it.
The right to remain silent, to start with. People start talking to the police as soon as the police start asking questions. And the truth is, you don't have to answer any of their questions ever. And so people don't know that. They think that they need to or have to talk to the police, and they don't. What I will tell you is that there are a lot of young officers out here now who actually think that you have to talk to them. And they think that if you don't talk to them, that they got a right to do something to you. But the truth is they don't. And that's just ignorance on their part, quite frankly.
Yes, I would say, in our community, a lot of people, we've been raised to trust the police. That's who you turn to when you're in trouble. And so people do need to remember, maybe identify yourself, but you do have the right to remain silent. And people often ask me or say, well, the police didn't read me my Miranda rights. But there's certain situations where they're required to do that, and they don't always have to do that. So the biggest thing to know, if the police is asking you questions and you're not sure if you want to answer, you can always call an attorney and get legal assistance.
Now, what about your license? Because I think that that's the biggest thing. They want ID to prove that you are who you are. So if they do ask for that, whether it's a traffic stop or whether you're walking, what happens then?
So if it's a traffic stop, they do have a right to ask you for your identification. And you should provide your identification if you have it. But you don't have a requirement to answer any other real questions.
Now, if you're walking, if you're just out in the community, what does that look like?
Well, when you're walking, unless the police have a reasonable suspicion to believe crimes are happening, you don't really have to stop for the police. So just stopping people and searching them, they don't have a legal right to do that. I often tell people, situations are different, and sometimes you may be approached by the police, but you don't have to. You could identify yourself, but they don't have a right to just walk up on you and stop you and search you.
I think that this climate that we're in has made people feel like they have less rights just as citizens. And specifically, depending on race or gender or where you're located or what time it is. So just this information alone is something that can be very helpful to people in order for them to avoid, any other craziness that could happen or anything that could ensue after that. But if people are in a situation in like the first 24 hours after being charged for anything, what should they do?
My recommendation is call a lawyer. Because, you don't want to go in court without representation, and you don't want to face your charges without proper representation. I explain to people, you don't go into the operating room without a surgeon. And the courtroom is essentially an operating room of the law. And so you need a good surgeon to represent you in those instances. And so the first thing you should do is call counsel and get advice. You don't call your friends, you don't call your mama and start talking to everybody about what you got going on, asking them for advice. Because the truth is that what you say to them is not privileged to them. And they can be asked questions about what it is you've said to them. The lawyer cannot. If you come sit down and talk to me and tell me what you have going on, I can't share it with anyone. No one can come get me and force me to tell them. But I can give you good advice about what you should do.
So when people are looking at like securing the lawyer, because you're saying call them, they haven't actually secured your services yet. So what is that process for people? If it's like, listen, I'm in a problem, I'm having this issue, this happened, and they're in the position where they haven't retained you yet, but what would you say that they need to kind of think about in that situation?
Well, like Ralph says, I always tell people, pick up the phone and give us a call. Most of the time, our consultations are free. So get some advice. One thing I usually try to help people look at is how much maybe their bond to be if they get charged. Will they have the resources to make bond? Also things about crucial evidence or critical evidence that may be lost over time. in the first 24 hours, you may need to know who are your witnesses. You may need to get names. Some people don't know who, they may know a nickname or not their full name or an area where they hang out, not an address. So that type of information can be critical in major serious crimes because you may need those people to help testify as to your innocence. So a lot of people who get locked up who can't afford counsel do find themselves in maybe weeks going by or months going by before they're able to talk to someone, and they've lost their ability to track down key witnesses in the case. So if you come talk to us, what I will try to do, and I always, Ralph and I, we might not give a ton of free consultation for hours, but almost everybody, we're glad to help. We don't want to see anyone find themselves in difficult situations without any guidance. So we will try to guide people and lead them into the right direction and help them as much as we can. So that consultation is free.
Now, one thing I'm going to suggest, because I don't think you never think you're going to get into something, right? Like you're out here, but when you mention the operating room, I think having a lawyer is kind of like insurance. You might not need it, but when you do need it, then you have to figure out who you want to call. So what do you think about the idea of people just going ahead and putting your number already in their phone? Because when you say call a lawyer, a person doesn't have time to go on Google and search if something's really happening right then and there. But if they go ahead and put your number in advance and it's lawyer, right? Then this way they know that they can call you immediately. Okay, I'm just giving that as a tip. So you guys might want to go ahead and put that in there.
919-680-4039.
There you go.
Call there immediately.
There you go. So then this way, if it's in your phone before anything happens, then you do have your lawyer right there on speed dial. And that can be, a lifesaver that can save. Because I think a lot of times people will call mom or call cousin or sister or whoever else first and say, call the lawyer. But then they don't know who to call. So this way it's already in your phone in case anything happens. And we just have to realize the world that we live in now, something's going to happen at some point in time. Hopefully not to us, but even if your family members have that number in there, then they already have you inside of the phone. And then that's their first call. So there's a difference between if we're doing something that's on a local level, if something's on a federal level. And so, what point is a case going to move from something local to federal?
So that really depends on the situation, and it depends on the situation and who the person is that's charged. If I get pulled over and I've got a firearm in my car, I'm not a felon. So I could get charged with carrying a concealed gun if it is concealed in some way, but that's about as far as it can go. But if I'm a convicted felon, then I could be charged in state court as a convicted felon, or I could also be charged federally. So there are many crimes that are actually crimes in federal and state court, and the two have separate jurisdictions, meaning you can be charged in state court and also charged in federal court. It doesn't often happen. Generally, when the feds take a case, the state generally will drop their interest in the case, but not always, because the jurisdictions are separate. And so really, it's a crime-specific question. There are some crimes that are crimes in both state and federal court. There are some that are just crimes in federal court. For instance, if you previously have had some kind of domestic violence protective order, and you remain under that order, or that order is active, you are prohibited federally from owning a firearm. Many people don't know that. The state will issue you a carrying concealed gun license, quite frankly, in many instances. But there is still a chance that you are still in violation of federal law, and in fact could be prosecuted in federal court. I get caught with a gun and a little bit of marijuana. In state court, typically not a big deal. However, it does implicate the possibility of a federal crime because they can charge you for having a firearm and being in possession of drugs. Separate crime doesn't really exist in state court, but it is a separate crime in federal court that you can be prosecuted for. And depending upon who you are, what your criminal history is, and where you are on the radar, that can often determine whether or not you're in state or federal court.
That's good information to know, because I definitely didn't know that. So if federal agents do contact you, the feds, if they contact you, what should be your next, plan of action? Because it's a different thing than just your local police coming to the door. So what are some of those things that people should kind of look out for that?
Well, you're still in the same boat. If you don't know, if you don't have an answer, call a lawyer. Attorney Frasier does our federal cases, but often when people approach me with that scenario, I tell them, look, come in, talk to us, let him go through it. He's experienced, he's been doing this for getting close to 30 years now. So he knows a lot of the federal agents. So it's best to get on top of it, come in and see us, let him make the calls, and then he'll give you the best advice. And you can go from there. You know, if you don't know, call a lawyer. No, don't try to handle it yourself. A lot of people say, well, if I talk, and I think we talked about this on our last conversation, where Ralph gave you an example where a guy talked and told the policemen and agents everything they wanted to know, but it would have been great information that he could have used if he would have talked to Attorney Frazier and let him speak to the prosecutor first, but he didn't. And so, you know, call your lawyer. Then he can maybe talk to the agents, talk to the ADAs, talk to the federal agents, and see if he can work something out where the information you give can help you.
And I think that that's just good information because a lot of times we feel like we want to defend ourselves. Like there is this, self protection kind of thing that goes on where it's like, well, I didn't do such and such. And I want to tell you what happened. And in this situation, this is not the best thing for you to do.
It's never the best thing for you to do to just out and out talk to the police. I don't care what they're telling you. They can tell you that if you talk to us, we won't charge you. If you talk to us, we'll help you out. And they might. The truth is that they might, but they might not. And what Randy was talking about really was there is, under the federal system, there's protected information and there's unprotected information. If I sit down and talk to the police, they kick my door in and then they want to talk to me and I decide that that's what I want to do, and I have that conversation with them, then everything I say to them at that point can be used against me too. So in the instance that Randy was referring to, that particular client, they knew about some drug sales that client had made. They didn't know that client had been selling drugs for the last 2 years at some high level. Well, that client told him all of that information. And that is what he ended up getting charged with, was all of the information that he provided. Different from if he had called me when they kicked their door in and shut up for a couple of days and then decided he wanted to talk to them and provide that information. We could have done that under what's known as a proffer agreement. That agreement allows him to speak freely, and he can tell them any and everything that he knows and wants to tell them, and they can't use it against him unless it's something they already knew. And so his situation would have been completely different. Instead of looking at a 5-year minimum, he would have been looking at about 2 years. But he talked himself into a situation where he was looking at more than 5 years. And there was really, at that point, nothing I could do to stop that because that was free information he gave away.
And see, that's when you use the phrase, got to be more careful. So, so I want to wrap up this episode because I think this is definitely a good way to end it, where we say, don't talk to the police without consulting your lawyer. Make sure that you have your lawyer's phone number in your phone so that this way you can reach out to them directly, and just make sure that that you have somebody that you can trust that's in your corner. And I definitely think that you guys are going to get the job done. So we appreciate you guys for watching.